everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Core Studio. Welcome to the show. Okay, so the Tarkir Dragonstorm spoiler season is coming to an end. I believe today is the last day of spoilers, and then I guess till tomorrow they do like the rest of the image dump. So technically there's like one more after this too, but most of those are just like usually chaff comments, but I'll cover any that actually end up being good. That being said, let's jump into it with one that I have been waiting for a long time, because this is some teaser text that is so specific and so cool, and the card is just so spicy. A 5/9 turtle with ward 2 for 5 mana in blue, and it says, whenever this creature attacks, put 3 stun counters on it and draw 3 cards. And of course, like, that stun counter is basically a delayed untap in a way, and it says, whenever you cast a turtle spell, untap this creature. Now, that was the teaser text that we got from Morrow, and yeah, it was a bit of a head scratcher at the time. I was like, okay, where is this going? Now we see exactly where it's going, and this is a really cool, really awesome creature that, yeah, for the right strategy out there, can really make the most of this. Again, this is a very hefty creature. Again, 5/9 for 5 mana, so a good blocker. It's got Ward 2, so some nice protection on it as well. But being able to say, hey, you know what, attack, draw 3, I mean, this is Arcanus the Omnipotent-ish, right? Arcanus is tap, draw 3, which obviously there's more ways to use and abuse that. That being said, you do have to, oh no, like, okay, it's done for a bit, I've got to wait a little bit to untap it. Because, of course, tortoises, it gets tired, it's a slow animal. It's like, all right, you know what, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to, turtle up in the shell, and then I'm just going to sit here for a bit. That being said, of course, obviously, if you've got a bunch of turtle spells, which there's not too many turtle tribal decks out there, but maybe there are, cool, then there you go. You get to untap this. I'm sure there's some weird combo that you can do with it as well, I'm sure. That being said, what you can do more easily with this is, well, Vigilance. If you've got, say, a commander or a deck built around, like, different kind of, well, keywords and granting them, like, Vigilance, then, yeah, this with Vigilance equals, oh, I attack, I draw 3. It does not matter that it's getting stun counters on it because, well, those aren't going away. I mean, those aren't going away. Those don't need to go away because you don't have to untap. You just keep attacking. It's a great blocker for you as well. So, yeah, this is a really cool, really spicy card. And again, I was waiting for a long time to see that, whenever you cast a turtle spell, untap this creature, what is that going to be on? And, of course, we are getting an amazing turtle with this one. So if you've been waiting for this one like I have, and, yeah, there's certain decks out there that can really utilize stuff like this very, very effectively, make sure you pick this one up. It's going to be really cool. Moving on, though, some other exciting spoilers, and one that I think is going to see a good amount of play as well, Star of the Arena. Thank you, MTG Goldfish, for the translated version of this one. A 1/1 Goblin Warrior for a single red mana, mobilize 1. So again, attack, make that 1/1 that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice at the beginning of the extend step. By paying 1 and a red, you sacrifice this creature. It deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature, not player. I mean, it still is nice, obviously. I personally would rather have it be players because you could be a finisher, but yeah, being able to take out other creatures, that's also very nice as well. So this is one where, yeah, it is low to the ground. It has 2 relevant creature types, especially Goblin, obviously, and it is good for a go-wide strategy as well. Again, basically, it's 2 creatures for the price of 1. I mean, Aristocrat-style strategies can consider it, too, because you're making creature fodder, and it's probably going to get taken care of in combat at some point, right? That being said, yeah, it's got relevant creature types. Goblin, you get it down early for, like, a Cranko deck. Quite nice. With a Cranko deck especially, you're like, oh, yeah, I make 1,000,000 goblins. Cool, all right. I sacrifice this, and I take out whatever creature I want. So it's not only, again, a way to get a creature out early, it's not only a way to essentially, again, somewhat go wide. You don't get to keep those creatures unless you've got, like, a specific, like, Sundial the Infinite type strategy, or, like, you make extra creature tokens with it, like, doubling up effects, and you get to keep those instead. That being said, yeah, it is a removal spell, too, so I can definitely see Goblin decks utilizing this one, Warrior decks as well, and, yeah, I mean, go wide strategies potentially, attack trigger strategies could be quite fun with this. Moving on. Way Speaker Bodyguard, a 3/4 Orc Monk for 4 mana in white. When this creature enters, return target non-land permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Flurry, cast your second spell, tap target creature opponent controls. Seems more to be a limited card. Could be very specific type of deck. Like if you're like, non-land permanent cards in my deck for the most part cost 2 or less, except I'm okay to conclude this one for some reason. It's probably more of a limited card. Next up, High Spire Bell Ringer, a 1/4 Jin Monk for 3 mana in blue, flying. The second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast. Now, this one is very interesting. It's going to be just kind of very circumstantial on what kinds of decks you actually end up using this in, because, well, again, cost reduction is incredibly potent. Very, very potent when it comes to reducing the cost of spells, because you can stack that in a turn. That being said, this one's kind of the opposite of that, because you can't stack it in a turn. You essentially are being like, okay, only my second spell costs 1 less to cast. So it's basically like a mana dork, but for your second spell. Now, it does help you on every single turn. So again, if you are a spell slinger type strategy with a bunch of instants and you're playing your opponent's turns a bunch, you want to be able to cast like at least 2 spells each turn, sure, that can definitely help you. Again, being able to reduce on your turn, your opponent's turns, etc., then it's basically giving you 4 mana with each trip around the table versus just 1. That being said, of course, like Gobble Electromancer, those kind of things are going to be more effective for the most part, even though they're more specific, because they help you with all of a certain type of spell, for all spells. So again, you can cast multiple spells in the same turn. So again, very specific types of decks might want to utilize this. Again, if you're really all about like casting, second spells each turn, the flurry type decks out there. But other than that, it's probably going to be more of a limited card. Next up, Delta Blood Flies, a 1/2 insect with flying that looks terrifying for 2 mana in black. Whenever this creature attacks, if you control a creature with a counter on it, each opponent loses 1 life. I mean, low to the ground evasive decks could consider this one if you also have like some counter synergies in there, I guess. Yeah, it is nice, like, not group sluggy, I guess, but kind of in a way. Draining, it's not bad. It's definitely not bad. It's just pretty specific. Like, would you just throw this in any kind of a counter deck out there? No, I don't think that you would. That being said, again, there's definitely a home for it for certain players out there. Moving on. Shocking Sharpshooter. A 1/3 human archer with reach that costs 2 mana in red. Whenever another creature control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. Okay, so this is basically impact tremors, but it is targeted. It is specific to one opponent, not to all opponents. So it is a nice additional kind of impact tremor type effect. Obviously, it's less effective than that, and it's more easily removable being on a creature. That being said, Human Tribal could definitely consider it as well. And yeah, it's not a bad, like, additional thing to include for those types of decks, like those pinging type strategies that benefit, based off of 1 damage and can make that even more, obviously. So yeah, definitely consider it for those too. But yeah, any kind of like a go wide, make a ton of creature strategy, you can do a lot with this, obviously. Next up, Zurgo's Vanguard. I don't know why these dog soldiers keep riding miscellaneous really weird mounts, but yeah, this one's riding a spider. Okay. Star 3 dog soldier for 3 mana in red, mobilize 1. Powers equal to the other creatures you control. I mean, again, a very solid limited card. You could consider it maybe in a go wide strategy, attack trigger strategy kind of thing as well. When it comes to like a Aristocrat style strategy, though, like if you're paying 3 mana, you probably want 3 bodies out of that. I mean, and yeah, you could eventually get to there, but yeah, like the whole like, oh, I've got a bunch of power. It's like, okay, good for you. But like, unless I've got a way to get you through, I don't really care too much about that. I mean, if you've got like a go wide power matter strategy, that's very specific, but there you go. Cool. Other than that, like, yeah, it's probably going to be more of a limited card, I would say. Like, a go-wide strategy could consider it because it's, like, going to be able to hit hard, but it's got no evasion. It's got no way to get through. And, yeah, to get that mobilize effect, you do need to go wide with it. So, yeah, it's a very interesting card for sure. Next up, Traveling Botanist, a 2/3 dog scout that is not riding a mount for 2 mana in green. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it, put in your hand. If you don't put the card in your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. Again, with those types of becomes tapped type strategies out there, like, commanders that have like tap a creature or whatever, those kind of things as well, and they do this, they do that. Yes, definitely consider it for those types of strategies out there, because it is a potentially good way to either get, lands off the top of your library right in your hand, so it is card advantage there, or, again, card selection if you're getting cards into your graveyard, and that can actually be beneficial as well. So you can get cards off the top of your library they don't need, or, again, like, fill your graveyard with things that you do need in your graveyard anyways. But when it comes to, like, just inherently the way that you would normally tap this right with attacking, probably not the most effective way to do so, because obviously it's just a 2/3 and it's going to get taken out in combat. So unless you can make some political deals with someone like, hey, it's just 2 damage, or if they've got like a defender, like a 0/4, and you're like, just block with your defender, please. Like, maybe you can make some deals with it, but I wouldn't count on it. So unless you've got, a deck that's dedicated to tapping in different ways, like Springleaf Drum kind of things, definitely maybe pass on this one. Moving on. Mammoth Bellow. Yeah, this is a very, very cool card. A sorcerer 5 mana in Teamer. Make a 5/5. Okay, so that's, I mean, these days would be considered overcosted. That being said, that Mammoth says, hey friend, come join. Because harmonize for 5 in Teamer, and so basically, again, you can cast that out of your graveyard by tapping the elephant that you just got. So basically, again, this is going to be, in total, 8 mana for 10 power across 2 bodies. I mean, is this for every deck out there? Absolutely not. Is it for, I mean, populate strategies could definitely consider it, though. You know, like, if you've got, like, oh, okay, like, a 5/5 is pretty solid for a token I want to populate, depending on what kind of populate deck you've got. Yeah, I mean, it's a decent card for sure. It's a very interesting card, and yeah, 10 power across 2 bodies is not too bad for that, and being able to replay it out of your graveyard for a lot cheaper is quite nice. Yeah, it's a pretty cool card for sure. Now, I've mentioned this a few times already, but this has been a pretty hectic spoiler season, so I am still playing catch-up on a few of these spoilers, so if you're like me, well, let's catch up on a few of them. Here we go. Sage of the Skies. This is a spicy card for sure. 2/3 Human Monk for 3 mana in white. When you cast this spell, if you've cast another spell this turn, copy this spell. The copy becomes a token. It's got flying and lifelink. It's kind of like they fixed Storm a little bit. So, again, basically, this is Storm, but just once and just on your turn and just for a spell you've cast. So, again, a lot of, prerequisites to that, but basically, yeah, a way to say, hey, okay, cool. I get to copy this spell. Good for me. All right, I get a second copy of it. Awesome. You cast another spell this turn, copy. Yeah, that's what you need. That's great. Okay, so yeah, get a 2/3 flying lifelinker and maybe another one. I mean, when it comes to, like, how many decks out there might want it, I mean, Human Tribal, Monk Tribal could consider it as well. They have a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures, and, like, especially, like, with, like, the Monk, like, Archimandrite likes to go wide as well, and, like, some life-linking decks could consider it, too. It's just a pretty cool card, and, again, a pretty cool concept and a different way that they go about Storm versus the, well, broken way that Storm is. Again, it's called the Storm Scale for a reason. Next up, Roamer's Routine. Sorcery for 3 mana in green. Search life for a basic land, put on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle, and you can harmonize it back out for 5 mana in total. Now, this is one where, if it was that land coming into play untapped, which typically, if you're paying 3 mana to go tutor up a land, a basic I should say specifically, it usually comes into play untapped. The vast majority of them out there do. So unfortunately, this one does come play tapped. I think I probably know why. It's because, like, you would have it come into play untapped, and then you would just harmonize with a creature, tap that land right away, and then all of a sudden you just got, again, basically 2 casts, and you got, another land in play untapped for basically free. And so they probably don't want that. I think, I'm not going to say this one's not unplayable, but it's like, it's not a very good ramp spell in comparison to a lot of other ones. It's very slow. And yeah, you probably just don't want that in Commander unless, like, you really care about casting things multiple times, casting things out of your graveyard. Yeah, if you care about that, then absolutely. If you don't, it's probably a skip, and it's just kind of close, but it's just not quite there. Next up, Roiling Dragonstorm, the last, I believe, of the Dragonstorms that I've covered. Champ for 2 mana in blue. When enters, draw 2 cards, discard a card. Whenever a Dragon Jewel enters, bring it back to its owner's hand. Yeah, I mean, this one is pretty solid. Draw 2, discard 1 is not a bad going rate for 2 mana, essentially. Just, yeah, replace one of the bad cards in your hand with 2 cards. Cool, good for you. So being able to do that on ETB is quite nice. If you've got a deck that can use and abuse this with, say, blink effects, which aren't all that, I mean, not going to say, like, common, but not uncommon when it comes to, enchantments. So, like, usually you're blinking, obviously, creatures, but, yeah, there's some ways to blink enchantments, too. So, if you've got that, cool. I mean, use and abuse this, draw a bunch of cards with it, discard some cards. Awesome, good for you. For a dragon deck, would you consider it? Maybe. Again, it's not a bad repeatable draw discard effect, but of course there are better draw effects out there, and I wouldn't necessarily just, like, work around, like, okay, I've got to make sure I play this lesser dragon, that costs less so I can bounce it back to my hand so I can replay it again. I'm not sure if I would go that far. An enchanter strategy, you could obviously consider it as well, because it is a low-to-the-ground enchantment that does have a decent ETB for you as well. Next up, Rune Scale Storm Brood, a 2/4 dragon for 4 mana in red, but it's got an omen for 1 in a blue. Counter target spell with mana value 2 or less. Flying, whenever you cast a non-creature spell or dragon spell, this creature gets +0 until end of turn. I personally wouldn't play this in my dragon deck. I don't have a dragon deck, but if I had a dragon deck, I personally wouldn't play it. there would be some moments where it could really shine for you, but I feel like you'd just be holding onto it for too long, just waiting for the right opportunity. Again, mana value 2 or less is pretty specific on what you're looking for when you're trying to counter something. So you might be like, oh, well, I held up my 2 mana, and the opponent right before me finally casts a spell that costs mana value 2 or less, and it's like a rampant growth. Do I counter their rampant growth? Because I don't want to just waste this card. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty specific. So I would say that this one, again, like the dragon part of it's like not good enough to consider. I mean, sure, like a spell slinger, awesome, amazing. Like, yeah, you can make it hit for a ton, but there's better ways out there to do that. So I would personally pass on this one. Next up, Sagu Wildling, a 3/3 for 5 mana in total. Flying. When this creature enters, you gain 3 life. It's got omens, which life for a base land, reveal, put in your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like, you know, we have seen a few of those different types of effects of, you know, go get a basic land for 1 mana, put in your hand. And yeah, this is good for very weird strategies out there, like my Hypergenesis deck, which has like very specific mana values that you want to hit and that kind of stuff as well. But outside of very specific weird builds that are like, I want to have all my cards on my deck cost, you know, more than a certain amount of mana value, and then it gives you like an alternative casting cost that costs less, so you can utilize it in weird ways. Not sure how much play this one's going to see. Like, you could maybe consider for a dragon deck, because again, it does fix your mana for you, and if you've been having problems with your mana fixing, you're like, okay, cool, like I can just, oh, it's in my hand turn 1, I'll utilize it, I'll go get that basic, maybe it comes later on, and I just like, okay, like get a 3/3 dragon for, again, if you have an Earth Dragon deck, for 4 mana, and I gain 3 life. Okay, cool. If you need another basic, go get another basic. There you go. Salt Rogue Pack Beast, a 4/3 beast. Apparently Camel's not a thing in Magic, I guess. I don't know. They've got like very specific creature types these days, but also very unspecific ones, and then some of it's just like a beast. Like, this Camel is a beast. For 6 mana in white, the spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature you control. When this creature enters, draw a card. Okay, just off to the side real quick. I believe I saw somewhere that actually on Scryfall, for similar cards to this one, they errated those to basically like affinity. So it would just say like affinity for creatures you control. Like, I'm pretty sure that they have errated those other cards that are like worded in this way to basically affinity for whatever the thing is. So I find it weird that they don't have that on there. So yeah, I'm just wondering. Anyone in the comments below, please help me out on that. But I believe I've seen that where it's not just no longer just affinity for artifacts isn't just the only kind of affinity. There are other kinds of affinities as well. It's just whatever the affinity is for. And this affinity would be for creatures you control. So I'm wondering why they haven't templated that way. And maybe it's because they designed the card a while back and then didn't switch it over. And maybe eventually they will. But, or they just like didn't want to confuse within a set where affinity is not a thing, I guess. But I kind of find it weird that you just like have that out there and then just like errata it later on Scryfall. But we shall see. That being said, yeah, I mean, probably more of a limited card, I would say. I mean, if you do have a go-wide strategy, it could be a 4/3 for a single mana for you to draw a card. But like, it's also the kind of card that early on in the game, like, you would not want this in your hand, obviously, because like, oh, got a 4/3 ETB draw a card for 6 mana. Gross. I'm not going to use this for a long time. It's going to be a dead card, so it's probably more of a limited card. Cool concept, though. Next up, though, Sarkhan's Resolve. Instant for 2 mana in green. Choose 1, +3/+3 until turn. Destroy target creature flying. Again, probably more of a limited card. If you need, like, a flexible pump effect, semi-removal, that's very specific, sure. But there are definitely decks out there that, like, care about, like, targeting and pump effects. But outside of those, probably not going to be considering it. Next up, Seize Opportunity. Instant for 3 mana in red. Choose 1. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. Up to our creature gets +2/+1 until end of turn. Yeah, Impulse Draw type of decks could consider it. Again, 3 mana right before your turn, instant speed. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. I'll play this. Or, again, a good pump effect for you if you need to. Okay, cool. Consider it. I'm not going to say it's like the best card ever, but it's one to consider. Moving on. Shock Brigade. A 1/3 Goblin Soldier with Menace. Okay, here's a question for 2 mana. Goblins are generally tinier than most other humanoid creatures. So are these horses, which seem sized to the goblins, are these also smaller than regular horses? Is that how this works? I think that's how this works. So these are smaller horses. Okay. Mobilize 1. Yeah, I mean, Not the worst, because, again, it is somewhat evasive. It is making a creature token on attack each time, and it's 2 mana. So it is giving you kind of repeat creature token production. It might get taken out decently early, but, like, again, aristocrat-style strategy doesn't really care all that much. Yeah, it definitely could consider it, because it is kind of repeat creature token production for you. Moving on. Severance Priest, finally. A 3/3 Jin Cleric with Death Touch for 3 mana in Abzan. When this creature enters, target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, exile that card. Go away. Whenever this creature leaves the battlefield, the exile card's owner creates an XX white spirit creature token, where X is the mana value of the exile card. Okay, so this one is one where, yeah, it is 3/3 Death Touch, like, for 3 mana, so it can be a good blocker, good attacker, which is nice for you. On ETB, again, it only has to be an opponent, though. It doesn't give you the option to take yourself, which, again, normally you wouldn't think to do that, maybe, but, like, if you've got, like, a big card in your hand that you don't care about, and you're like, okay, cool, I'll just get rid of my 9 mana card that I'm not going to play for a long time, and then when this leaves, I make a 9/9, yeah, good for me. Yeah, being able to do that would be quite nice to have the option to do so. That being said, still being able to get rid of an opponent's card out of their hand, and, yeah, just saying, like, okay, it's gone forever, goodbye, and you get an XX, a decently sized creature, potentially, depending on what I got rid of out of your hand. It's an interesting card for sure. Could be a decent, like, blink effect type deck consideration as well. Death Touch Tribal, obviously. But yeah, a very cool concept for a card. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. As always, comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.